We need to think about how can we shape culture in a way that aligns with vision and aligns with values.
Yeah.
I've heard you speak about meetings a fair few times, and
I love meetings.
You're very passionate that meetings can be and should be good and healthy.
Yeah,
Why don't you
especially the meeting that you are running.
Yes.
Like the number of times people will talk about that they don't enjoy meetings, and it's like, it's your meeting. Like, you're in charge of this. Like,
you set the agenda.
Do something here. A meeting without food should be an email.
Well, welcome to Ministry, a BUV Generations Network podcast. So good to be chatting with you again today. My name is Adam Southwood. I'm the engagement pastor at New Hope Baptist Church.
And I am Kimberly Smith. I work at the BUV Support Hub.
So good. So good to be chatting to you again,
Always
Kimmy.
Good.
We do love a good chin wag and a bit of a conversation.
Don't mind a chat.
It very much is what got us into this whole podcast thing in the first place. And I've really enjoyed doing it. I'm hoping that people are getting something out of it. And we're hoping to engage as much as we can with people all around the place and just help people along their first few steps and journey as they're stepping into ministry. This week, I thought I would bring a topic to the table that we can unpack from a few different angles, and that's culture. So I think that something that we don't always consider as we're stepping into ministry, as we're looking at our job description, is the fact that you are now responsible for shaping or for reshaping the culture of the particular thing that you're in. Not even to mention the fact that you're also like inheriting a culture or a thing, and that's a conversation in its own right, and we can go there one day when we want to go there. But it's a massive factor, right? Like we need to think about how can we shape culture in a way that aligns with vision and aligns with values.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah. And that sustains like health for everybody who's involved and flourishing for everybody that it serves, that there's, that only good things come out of the culture that we're creating. Yeah,
totally. In my recent kind of experience of being in the youth space for a while, I noticed that there was an element of culture that I wanted to start reshaping. Our leaders' briefings and meetings before youth had become kind of just part of the thing that we did, and it was just
a task to tick off the list.
To tick off, and I think because it had a little bit of that maybe inherited, history or whatever as well. Look, the notion was I don't really need to be there for that, do I? And stepping into that space, if I want to shape the vision and direction and mission of our youth ministry, a leader's briefing before a night is one of the best times where I can actually help shape and deliver some stuff there. So I had to go through the season of helping to tweak and develop that a little bit, and took it from something that was often ignored and sometimes just a little bit of this is what's happening tonight. Okay, let's pray in your groups. To something that I hope was a bit more of a value add, included a bit of a thought of the day and an encouragement to our leaders, and then specific individual encouragements as well. I set up some mechanisms for feedback that I think I mentioned another week, where on a particular briefing, I could look back at the feedback from last week and go, hey, Annabelle, we noticed this last week, and very specifically name the value that she brought. I think I've heard it being said, possibly from you actually before, that it's saying because when you're giving encouragement or feedback, changes something from just being flattery to being proper feedback. And so this was really good. Like this was helpful as encouragement because of the way that it impacted this, and started building that into my culture.
Nice.
And look, I think there could always be a bit of room to grow in any of those spaces, but meetings and launches and things like that, it's like a free gift of a tool we have, yet there is a posture and thinking around these mechanisms that aren't always that positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard you speak about meetings a fair few times, and
I love meetings.
You're very passionate that meetings can be and should be good and healthy.
Yeah.
Why don't you
especially the meeting that you are running.
Yes.
Like the number of times people will talk about that they don't enjoy meetings, and it's like, it's your meeting. Like, you're in charge of this. Like,
you set the agenda.
Do something here. Yeah, I do have quite a passion for meetings. Patrick Lencioni says, meetings are to a leader as surgery is to a surgeon.
You're right.
So this is where we see who you are, in action. Like, because this is the moment that you're interacting with the team that you lead. The very thing that makes you a leader is here. And so I think we need to really elevate the value of those times that we do have our people together. And particularly I think we need to think about, I'm sure you've heard the quote before, I just survived another meeting that should have been an email. The way you, in a meeting, you're like, this is just facts. Like, this is just so transactional. Just send me an email, make me read it. And often it is an email that's been sent and you're told to read, but then who read the paper? No one. Oh, so now I'll just read it again. And so the poor person who did read the email is like, well, that wasn't worth my energy. But I have some strongly, deeply held convictions around meetings. Firstly, I think if you can, there's very few circumstances where a meeting should not have food. I think there should be food.
Food in every meeting.
Food in every meeting. And I think...
You heard it here first, guys. Bring food to all your meetings.
I have a friend who quotes me as saying, a meeting without food should be an email. But food, it doesn't always have to have food, but there's an element of the culture or the environment that's created around food that's really significant to building good team. We serve one another. We're happy. There's a bit more sort of incidental kind of interaction between people. Just here past the donuts, here past the milk.
Hospitality. Side of that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like having a cup of coffee.
Yep.
We're based in Melbourne, Australia.
Yep.
Coffee is the sixth love language here.
It's the currency of the day.
Yeah.
But I think, anything that creates just a warm, safe, fun environment, I think has to be part of it. But I do think there's more value in the food than just the calories. Like, I think there's some, as I say, I think it creates something of an environment that's really happy and healthy. I think that there's 4 parts to every meeting that I would lead. And this is when you're thinking more significant, meeting times. It's not your briefing or your reviews at the, your 5 minutes here and your 10 minutes there. This is if you've got your crew together, however regularly or frequently you can do that.
Meetings that part of the intention is shaping culture and mission and vision.
Yeah. So 4 parts. The first one is relationship building.
Great.
And I experienced in my years of ministry that I actually have that on my meeting agenda as an agenda item. We're building relationship because, again, that's something we can't do on an email as easily. So we have food, we talk to one another, we share one another, we catch up with one another, we allow time for just the Adam, what's been happening in your life this week, or something significant's been happening, in this part, let's have a chat about that, anything, playing a game, doing something sort of that generates relational engagement and connection.
Yeah. If I can press in on that for just a second, part of your role, Kim, is very much traveling and meeting up with various pastors, ministry leaders in the generation space of churches all across Victoria, in Australia, one of our states here. And it sounds to me like this isn't just something that you see as a means to get through the formalities of checking in, getting through the obligatory, hey, how you doing? But there's some real intentionality behind this.
We're investing in the development of trust, relational trust, which every team needs as a core foundation for anything that comes after that.
And trust isn't built quick.
No, and it's not built transactionally. So
Yeah.
that this is one of those things that it is harder to build trust on an email than it is.
Yeah.
And because it's those little deposits of relational gift to one another that can really grow trust. I mean, research tells us if you laugh in an environment, you'll remember that more strongly, like it'll be a stronger memory for you.
Yeah,
You're
right.
more likely to consider the place as safe and a general feeling of warmth. So to give space for that kind of thing, I think is a core target, reason for meetings, or a thing that we're trying to achieve in our meetings. And then so relationship building. And then the next one I would say is intentional culture building. So storytelling towards our goals and our values and our sense of what we're trying to achieve. So what's been happening in youth ministry this week, Adam, or since we last met, or used to run a children's ministry team, and every time we would meet, go around the circle, and the question was, what's an interaction you've had with a child or a family outside of a program children's ministry space? Because that was one of our key values and our sort of strategic goals, was that we would develop relationship with these kids that wasn't contained to the ministry space.
Yeah.
So as those stories are being told, not only we're just hearing good stories, as we talked in previous episodes about how you gather the story and for reporting and measuring, but also as we talk into each of those things, we're reinforcing the values that they represent.
Really affirming the gold in there and closing that feedback loop of encouraging each other in the stuff that's going on. And especially in, ministry can have its ups and downs. There can be moments that's tough to get through, difficult conversations, difficult seasons in the life of those who we love and care deeply about. And so, you might have had a week where you didn't have a lot of great interactions with people, but hearing that others are having interactions encourage you. That's really cool.
And as you say, it's kind of going, we talked about that last week. How's that going now? That there's that touching in, and it's tracking
sense of care,
growth, tracking measurement. So relationship building, culture building. And then the third thing I think is important in meetings is development. It's like what you were talking about, the value add, that as you are part of this team, there's something in it for you. There's something, we'll invest in you while you're investing into this ministry for whatever this ministry or this team exists to do. And because we're asking a lot of volunteers, we're wanting them to contribute at a pretty high level. We're trusting them with a type of ministry, interaction.
Putting some levers in their hand that have some real outcomes, that they can often have influence over how we might spend some of the budget or where we direct some of our attention.
And so I think the least we can do is give them a little bit of investment in return. So that there's a developmental opportunity. So that could be, I sort of try and, spread it out around what you would do. And some of it's like more discipleship, ministry to the heart, spiritual disciplines, encouraging, like just having a prayer time or having a reflection moment, or just really ministering to the soul and valuing that, maybe even modelling some self-care practices and helping in that space. It could be around sort of vision and values, or mission reorientation. Remember who we are and why we do this and what's going on, and here's our target, and here's a reminder of the values or the vision that we set, or the mission that we set for ourselves.
That's great, because it keeps investing into that culture piece as well, doesn't it?
And then I think skill development, like how to, in a worship space, it is spending time on that particular riff in the introduction to that particular song, or it's learning like going deeper into how do I lead a small group discussion, or how communication skills, like whatever it is that's pertinent to the ministry that you're part of. But in any of that space, it's that upskilling, and we want to help you be better equipped to do what it is we're asking you to do in this ministry. And then the fourth and final thing is planning in a meeting. And I think we have this all the way, like flipped around the other way, because planning to me should be the smallest part of a gathered meeting, unless the meeting's specifically for planning. You might get a team together, hey, we're planning camp. So on Tuesday night, we're just like, that's the only thing we're doing is
nuts
we're
and
just,
bolts.
but over the rhythm of a year, the ebb and flow of that, making sure that not all meetings are planning meetings, that some are more like these relationally, culture setting ones. But thinking about planning in the context of, have I, I've given you this information, this information because it's on our portal, or it's, it's in that email, or it's somewhere accessible to you. Are there any questions about that? Like doing what you can only do in the room together with the stuff that otherwise can just be, floating around the internet. It is letting you know, I did change that date to that date. Are there any questions about that? Or here's what's coming up that we need to be aware of, or I want to just draw your attention to this one thing. A smaller amount of that sort of housekeeping, data-oriented, task-oriented things, because that is the stuff that translates most easily to an online forum.
Yes.
Whereas the other stuff is harder to do in that online space. So let's reserve the together time for the together things and keep that other stuff online.
How would you go about, if for many of us, our story has potentially been that as we're stepping into ministry, it's a role that's got a very significant link to a particular program. And so, in my case, it was youth ministry. Yeah. And so there's a decent aspect of me wanting to plan for that ministry. Yeah. Any tips on helping to consider, how do I balance that well throughout the year? And
that's a great question. And because I think each ministry, each context is slightly different because of the tradition or the culture you've already established about the rhythm of meetings. I mean, in my previous church context, our ministry teams met monthly. So I had an hour and a half every month. And so I could do 1 month on planning camp, because the month before and after it, we did more of these other things, but some people, they do a meeting at the start of the year and that's it, in terms of all-ins, or it's every quarter, or, it's more incidental. So there's a lot of it depends on the rhythm and the culture that you've established in terms of teams meeting together. But I think that, balancing out those things is proportionate to the amount of time that you have them.
Yes.
So if I'm only having you once a year, then I think more of it needs to be about relationship, because more of it is going to be online. But if I have you every month, as I say, I think that gives you a bit more flexibility to flex with what you do in that space. But I think you can do both, and you can move faster through other parts depending on what the higher need is. I think there's a lot of stuff we can do to preempt a meeting that makes it take less time in the meeting.
Yeah.
Next month at our meeting, we're going to plan our theme for our end of year
brainstorm
thing. So come with some ideas, rather than you say, all right, let's talk about, our event, and everyone's like, the slower thinkers don't have time to contribute at all. The quick thinkers spit out 100 ideas that are too crazy and too hard to think of on the spot, and it's probably not the best use of that meeting time anyway. So doing a bit of pre-work, establishing culture around how we read communication, finding the best platform for that with the group that you're working with, and rewarding the reading of that. That you don't get to the meeting and rehash what was on the email that someone didn't read, that we're assuming you've done that because it's going to save us time here, so that we can go to step 2 straight away, because you've already done step 1 back there. So I think it's all culture, it's all training, it's all managing expectation and rhythm, and establishing routines that set you up to be able to use more of those meeting times for relationship and culture building.
That's great. I think my encouragement to our listeners would be that culture, just like trust, builds over time, and reshaping and reaffirming and re-highlighting values. It's a time piece. It's not, I'll
have one meeting and it'll be done.
I've realized I want to make my way to this particular culture. Doesn't just get there overnight. It's lots of prayer, discernment, considering, planning, and strategic thinking. In order to get there. If you want a culture of say apologies when it comes to meetings or wider church meetings. So it's
right.
people don't just not rock up and not let you know, but like let you know what's going on, and a culture of being really aware of the people that you're with, or a culture of.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
In the staff team that I'm part of, apologies are announced at the start of a meeting. So, we have an apology from Kim because she's away on holidays, or she, whatever it is, which it reinforces the idea that showing up matters, because we notice when you're not there and you're not there, but we haven't got an apology listed for you. So there's a communication piece missing, because he's sort of rewarding the people who are bothering to honour the fact that it matters that I'm not there.
And I think that's this really beautiful intersection of culture and your value set, right? Like where we value people, we want to highlight that particular culture. The more we do that, the more we not only keep walking towards the culture we want, but we're reaffirming the values that we're setting as well. And so I think that our value set as leaders and as a wider organization have a massive influence on the way that we lead and when we run meetings and whatever it might be. The wise man, Bill Brown, in a session that I did with him a number of years ago now, helped me to kind of navigate what I would like classify as my own personal values. And went through a process of articulating them and writing them down, and he would quiz me on them. He would call me and he would quiz me, and I would have to be able to, reiterate something along the lines of, I want to be an authentic leader. Authenticity is really important to me. Creativity is important to me. Being like using your God-given giftings in a particular space. Rocking up on time, like reliability is something that I really value. And of course, on the spot, I'm going to forget exactly what they are.
That was a good list.
But just this continual thing of always coming back to your values and having a value set that works. As an organization, the faith community that I'm a part of has 3 really clear values. People matter most. There is always hope. And grace changes everything. And anything that we do when there's a change, when there's a culture shift or decision that has to happen, right, we filter it through those values. A number of years ago, there are some law changes in Victoria as a suppression act was built in. If you don't know what that is, go and look it up. We're not going to get into that now. But the posture that we took as a church was, if people matter most, and the heart behind this is to help vulnerable people in some capacity, then let's take it from that posture.
Right.
And that value thinking has bled into all sorts of aspects of our ministry. It's just been really, really strong. And I think especially decision making
and the reality is we all have values that direct every decision we make. They're the reason we do the things we do. But the intentionality to work out what they are is a helpful thing, both personally and as a ministry space, because as you say, it becomes quite orienting, that we can put our decision making through the filter of those values, that we can hold each other accountable to certain behaviours that are about, that doesn't align with our values. That's not who we said we were going to be. That there's a dynamic that can happen within a team or a staff or, whatever it is that there, as I say, this orienting thing of that's our true north. Like, let's line up with that. Are we heading in that direction? And as you said, the meeting is a place where those values can be shared, where they can be reinforced, where they can be taught, where they can be modelled, where they can be sort of unpacked a little bit more to really get behind. So what would that mean for us if we say we value people? How does it express itself in this particular context? And the culture will be stronger and healthier the more clearly those values are articulated, able to be articulated by the people in the organisation. I know for us in our staff team, we always kind of get quizzed at the start of every year, like who knows the staff values, and at every staff meeting we do shout outs aligned to our staff meetings. There were call outs, other staff members to say, I saw this person enacting this value and giving examples and stories to that. super orienting. Bringing people on board, keeping everybody focused on the same thing, because you're going to have diversity of opinion, expression, experience within your teams, and we celebrate all of that as long as it's still heading us in the value, in the direction that our values align.
I think that personally and as a community, that having really, really clear values it's just gonna lead to stronger decision making and a stronger culture. And as we're stepping into new ministry spaces, as we're figuring out how can I be the best leader that I can be in this space, how can I use what I've given and be faithful to God and figure out where He wants me to shape and lead and guide or whatever it may be. How can I put some really good things in place to help me get there? And there's probably a few little things that we've mentioned today that, personally we might not even think about anymore because we've just been doing it for so long. That stating of values that you do at your team meeting, maybe the naming, the public naming of encouragements at my old leaders meetings. Like there might be little things like that you're sitting there going, I could adopt that. It's not a massive system change, but the outcomes of bringing your values and your culture into your everyday is incredible.
And I would say your values are shaping your ministry and they are shaping your meetings. And so if you can kind of do the reverse, diagnosis, like if my meetings are looking a certain way, then that's actually reflecting what I'm prioritizing or what I'm valuing. And that's what other people are experiencing of you, is how you conduct yourself or how you conduct the things that you're in charge of. So as the cultural curator of your ministry and your teams, you are already shaping a certain kind of culture, and the encouragement is to get more mindful about that and more intentional about the type of culture you want to create, to name it and to start speaking into it and taking everyone with you towards it.
Wow. Powerful stuff. It has been so good to chat to you again for another week of the Welcome to Ministry podcast. Looking forward to chatting again next time.
See you then.